When people understand that you listen and you understand what they want, you become more valuable. In any business, you need to understand your client, you need to understand their needs, and sometimes it's the little nuances that make a huge difference to them.
Welcome to Solo to CEO. We're sitting here with Simcha. Is it Sim or Simcha?
My friends call me Simcha and
Sim Shain. Sim, tell me what you do.
So for the most part, I tell people I'm a paramedic and I do aviation, both private and corporate aviation for medical and for business and corporate travelers.
Okay, and what's Paraflight?
Paraflight is an aviation company that specializes in medical transports, corporate executive transports, organ transports, urgent transports, anything that you can utilize aviation for, jets and helicopters. That's what we do. If there's a need to fly, we're happy to get you there.
And you have your own jets, or you sub it? You sub it out?
We're strictly brokerage. We're what we call asset light. We're more of a technology company of what we do. So we've built special apps that I'm sure we'll talk about during this podcast. We built special apps that are able to communicate with operators all around the country and all around the world, actually.
So I like that model, asset light. What assets do you have for Paraflight?
So the assets we have are just what we use for our ground transport, our staff, and our technology. But we don't want to deal with mechanicals. We don't want to deal with aircraft payments. We don't want to deal with pilots and maintenance and anything else like that. We just like to deal with getting the job done. And we pay money for other people to handle all the large assets.
So none of the planes actually say Paraflight on it?
Correct.
Okay, cool. No, because you had that car with the wraparound Paraflight. I was like, oh, that's cool.
We actually have quite a few cars that have that. And that's what we utilize for mostly for our organ trips and for our medical trips and some of our chesed trips.
So what the cars do is it brings whatever is being transferred, brings that to the plane, and then the plane takes it from there?
Generally. So to and from the plane. So we'll have, we usually pick up organ transplant teams or just organ boxes or chesed teams, whatever we need to use. So we utilize those vehicles for them. So they can take a surgical team, bring them to an airport. They'll take off on a flight and they'll pick them up a couple hours later. Sometimes if the trip is not very long and it doesn't require a jet or a helicopter, then we'll just use that vehicle to go to another hospital to take a team or just to pick up a heart or a lung or a liver or kidneys or anything else.
Awesome. How many guys are you at Paraflight?
So with full-time and per diem, we're about 60.
Oh, wow. And are they all on the East Coast or they're all over the place?
So we're mostly based in the East Coast, although we do have a West Coast division that stays up, later at night, and we have a team that sits in Los Angeles.
Okay, so how do you have your staff set up? What are most of your employees doing?
Most of our employees are drivers, paramedics, nurses, physicians, and flight coordinators. So we have flight coordinators during the week, and then we have flight coordinators that come on over the weekends, and then we have flight coordinators that take over overnight.
Wow. And when did you start this thing?
So I started it in 2014. I'll tell you a little bit about my background.
Go ahead.
I was very close with my mentor, my Rebbe in Chesed. His name was Shlomo Zakheim, Zechron Levracha. He passed away in 2013, Rosh Hashanah. So this Rosh Hashanah will be 10 years. But Shlomo was a very, very special man. He actually owned his own aircraft. He owned a Lear 31 that he used for Chesed, that he would send patients wherever they had to go.
For kindness.
What?
He would use it for kindness.
He did. That's what he did. Correct. He used it for kindness and he used it for charity work to be able to help people. And he got sick, secondary to his exposure on 9/11. And at that point, I was flying with him probably for a number of years. At that point, I think I started flying with him in 2008. So probably 4 or 5 years that I was flying with him. And he called me into his hospital room and he said, I want you to take my jet. And I said, okay, where are we going? And he said, I want you to take my jet and I want you to go change the world. And I want you to open up an air ambulance company and never forget the charity component. Never forget that it's all about giving back. And one thing that Shlomo always taught me was that it's very easy to say no when somebody needs help because you can say no and you can move on. But he said, the trick is always to be able to know how to say yes, something that's much harder. He would say, if it's difficult, we do it. And if it's impossible, we try harder. And that's a motto that he really lived with, and I try to live with that as well, is to see whatever we can do to say yes.
You're saying so the majority of them are are drivers
Well,
and
drivers, I'm
paramedics.
saying for the most part, there are many. No, drivers, paramedics. Most of those are per diem, and then and then we have our flight coordinators, who are a big bulk of what we do. Not 30 flight coordinators. We have about 10 of them, but that's really what we do. It's most of our work that we do is coordination. So as I mentioned before, like we talked about asset light, I believed in just really doing technology and things like that. I think that's where you can scale that much quicker. So our understanding for not putting our money into assets is the headaches that come along with it of managing all of that. Running an aviation company is extremely intense. And for us to be able to scale properly, we decided to scale with technology. It makes it much easier for us and much more cost effective.
It just means that for per job or per whatever it is, that each of these jobs costs more.
Potentially.
Right.
Or less, because there are many operators who don't make money. Management companies make money. Operators don't necessarily make money when it comes to aircraft. Or aircraft owners don't make money. Many of them use their aircraft to depreciate their asset, and they understand that it helps offset some of their costs when they need to fly private. But in reality, many of the operators do not make money because they have to deal with these things. They have to deal with maintenance issues and mechanicals and routing aircraft and things like that. So that's why we felt for our business model, for us to be able to scale across the country like we've done, and to go beyond that across the world, we would do that with technology. Sort of like Uber. Think about it. Who's the largest taxi company in the world?
Uber.
How many cars do they own?
None. One.
No, not even. Maybe they have one for advertising. Who's the largest hospitality company in the world?
I don't know.
Airbnb. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah, Airbnb.
You know how many hotels they own?
None.
You know how many rooms they own?
None.
Maybe their office. But that's what we decided to do. So we became the Uber for flights.
Awesome. The Uber for flights. Yeah, you mentioned something like that in one of the things I checked out before sitting down with you.
Well, we built an Uber type app. That's how we associated. So we built it for our organ flights division, which gives us the ability to reach out. Right now we have I believe around 80 plus operators on our app, representing a few hundred aircraft. And we're limited, though, to the size of aircraft and to those who want to do organ flights. Not everyone is cut out for it. Many of the organ flights take place at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and there's only a few hours notice to be able to do that. So we said, well, what else could we do? So we decided that, and we just launched it actually last week, was we launched the Urgent Flights app, because we recognize that emergencies happen. And we're not talking about medical emergencies. Those happen too. We've been dealing with that stuff for the last 9 years or so. But we recognize that business emergencies happen and family emergencies happen, and even operators, people who own their own aircraft, have emergencies that happen. If they have a mechanical and they need to have a recovery, or if for some reason they double book an aircraft, or if their crews aren't available, anything could come up. Where else are you going to find an aircraft with 2, 3, 4, 6 hours of notice? So we said we're going to use the same technology that we used to build our Organ Flights app, and we revamped and we built this Urgent Flights app.
Wow. And how does that work?
So it works in 2 ways. So if somebody needs an urgent flight, so a regular person has a funeral or a business emergency, or they have to get somewhere quickly, or their flights all got canceled and they have to get back for business. So they might have booked on a commercial flight, like happened a couple of weeks ago in Florida. Everything shut down. I was actually stuck there too. All flights are canceled. So some people could say, hey, you know what? I'm going to weather the storm. It's going to take, a day or 2 or 3 for me to come home. So it'll cost you for a couple of nights hotel. Hopefully the airline will cover it, and we'll get some food and we'll be okay. Especially if you're stuck in Florida. If you're stuck in Cleveland, I don't know if they're going to want to stay there. Or
right.
Detroit. I'm not knocking Cleveland. But
you're knocking both.
Right. I'm knocking both.
But not everyone has the luxury to do that.
Right. Not everyone has the ability to do it. Not even the luxury or the ability or the need. Sometimes somebody can say, hey, I can stay here a couple of days. But if they have an urgent business meeting or they have a real estate closing and they need to be back in time, they might have to just bite that bullet and say, we're going to do it. So that helps those in that business. So they would reach out to us, and we just put it out over our app, and whoever bites comes back and sends us in a couple of quotes, and then we can pick the most reliable and most responsible quote, and we'll present it to the client, and it's their choice if they want to take it. The other one it speaks to is to our operators. So we have operators that are signed up for our app, and we're building them every single day. More operators are joining. So if an operator they're there on the receiving side. So think about an Uber driver. So you have 200 or 300 Uber drivers, and you can send a request, and they can say, hey, I'm in the vicinity, I'll pick up that trip, and they take it. What happens is sometimes these operators themselves have a mechanical, have an issue. So they can go within the app itself, and they can reach out and say, hey, I need an aircraft right now. And they can go to our pool of operators, and they can request an aircraft, and they can be that buffer between themselves and their client to make sure that, A, the trip gets done, but they don't have to worry about their client going somewhere else because they just found, because this operator, quote unquote, let them down because they didn't have an aircraft for them. So now the same operator can just book another aircraft for them.
All right, they can basically sub out their hire to Paraflight or Urgent Flight. So what are the key differences between Paraflight and the new service Urgent Flight?
So Urgent Flights is really just one of our divisions that we have. So Paraflight arranges for medical, corporate, organ flights. That's what the entire company does. In the event that we need an urgent flight, we go to our Urgent Flights app. So we have people who book us for Paraflight. They could book us a week, a month, 6 months in advance sometimes. Although most private jets, they don't really want to book even 6 months in advance, but typically anywhere between a couple weeks and maybe a month or two, they'll book out for a trip, maybe closer to holidays, or if there's a big event going on, call it the Super Bowl or the World Series or any sort of large event that's going on where they know a month or 2 or 3 ahead of time, they might want to try to book that. And many times you need to book those slots a considerable time in advance. So large golf tournaments, sports, any sort of athletic tournament where they know, a year in advance when it's going to take place, they can schedule that.
Right. Whereas in urgent flights, we need something now.
Right. So generally we call urgent flights anywhere between what we call ASAP as in now. So call it 2 hours to 48 hours. Even if people own a jet card, right? So some people might be Wheels Up or NetJets or one of these other cards. You can book a flight on NetJets and Wheels Up in 6 hours or 12 hours or something even 24 hours. That's what they call an ASAP flight. So 24 to 48 hours, I believe they charge a hefty fee. We don't do that. We don't have any additional markup simply because it's an urgent flight. We recognize an emergency and they get the same price they would get if they were booking it 4 weeks in advance. It doesn't really make a difference.
So why would people book things 4 weeks in advance?
Well, A, they'll be able to get their aircraft, and they're not dependent on what's available right now. So it's that level of comfort knowing that, hey, if I need an aircraft in 4 weeks, I know I'm going away for a holiday, and I need to leave on April 14th and come back April 24th. They're much better off booking it 4 weeks in advance because you have a much larger pool of availability. When you're trying to do something urgent, you're limited by what's available and what can get here right now. And there's a possibility that you're going to pay more because now you just need a one-way trip as opposed to a round trip that you booked and you locked in.
So you mean if depending on how the aircrafts are set up, then you might have to pay more because the aircraft would need to come in. I didn't get the last part.
Correct. So sometimes they have to reposition. So if you're in, let's call it New York, right? And you have a few airports in the area, Farmingdale, JFK Airport, which is an expensive airport to get into, Teterboro, White Plains, whatever it might be. So if you set that up a month in advance, so the operator has to figure out how to position themselves in. But if you're right now sitting in Newark Airport and your flight got canceled, now you have to go to Teterboro, right? If there's no aircraft available right now in Teterboro, we might have to fly them in from Boston. We might have to fly them in from Washington or Philadelphia or somewhere else. They have to pay that repo charge to get them in right now for that flight. Sometimes they might have to fly in from further. You can fly somebody in from Florida. But if you're desperate to get out, you just got to use whatever pool of resources you have to be able to bring them in right now.
Awesome. So let's go back to 2014, right? Is that what it was? 2015?
Well, 2013. So my friend Steve passed away in 2013. He told me to take his jet and go change the world. I didn't take his jet for a couple of reasons. It was very overwhelming for me after he passed away, and it's also very expensive to maintain a jet. So I told the family, sell the jet and I'll figure something out. And then in 2014, we opened up as an air ambulance company. And from there we said, well, if we're doing air ambulance and we can fly medical teams and patients everywhere, why don't we just do the same thing and we could fly people? So we started to do that. And then we had an opportunity to get into organ flights. We said, if we can fly ASAP flights for patients with medical teams, why don't we just use aircraft to do ASAP flights, and we actually don't have to provide medical teams because it's the hospitals that provide their teams. So we just need to be able to get that aircraft there, get everything they need, their catering, their ground transport and everything else, and then they're good to go. And We get to save lives.
And do they get to choose what's on the menu? Like if I wanted sushi.
So I'll be honest with you. On a regular client, they can pick anything they want. We accommodate them. But on organ flights, it depends on the time of day. And I can tell you that we know pretty much every doctor, every client, what they like and what they dislike. We know who doesn't like tomatoes and who doesn't like cheese. And really, we know we really keep track on our computers of everything. So when somebody makes a comment to a pilot and they say, oh no, pastrami again, we're not going to give them pastrami for the next little bit, or chicken again, whatever it is. We know what they like. We know what types of milk they like. We know types of desserts they like. We really keep track of everything, as we're a real concierge service for that. But I will tell you that, yeah, for when we have the time, especially, again, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, we're limited on our options to what we can get as food for the doctors and surgeons. Yeah, but those who do request sushi and they want sandwiches or they want chicken, whatever it is that they want, we do it. When it's their birthday, we'll have a little birthday cake on board for them too.
So that's actually, there's an important lesson we could pull out of that. Why is that so important?
To make them happy, people
to remember every single thing, document every single thing they say, and use that to give them a better experience.
Because it makes a big difference. When people understand that you'll listen and you understand what they want, you become more valuable. When somebody in any business, you need to understand your client, you need to understand their needs. And sometimes it's the little nuances that make a huge difference to them.
So the key is to listen.
Right.
Listen and remember.
To listen and remember. And when we make mistakes, and we do, we always tell people, we made a mistake, we try to only do that once. And we try to really learn from our mistakes. So it could be something as simple as providing, and we've done this. We provide catering for people, and we had no idea that they were vegan. And now we found that they didn't eat the whole flight. So now before any flight, we ask about any dietary restrictions. And it could be allergies. Something as somebody saying, my child has a peanut allergy. Or somebody has a milk allergy. We'll make sure that there's no nuts and no milk on that plane, plain and simple. Because we don't want anything to happen on board. We want to make sure that we're taking care of them. So we really, really listen and we process. And I'll tell you that on some of our larger aircraft, so when we do like these, call them the big Gulfstreams, the ones that have a flight attendant, we usually get a report afterwards, a written report, detailed report of what their likes were and what their dislikes were. So if we know that somebody liked a specific brand of soda, perhaps they asked for Diet Coke and we only had 6 of them on board and they ran out of them somewhere during the trip, we'll make sure that for the next trip, there's extra Diet Coke on board. It's all about that attention to detail and that concierge service. And it works like that in every business, right? If you had a real estate business and you had to sign up tenants, you find out what your tenants like. You'll find out their likes and their dislikes. Maybe they need more parking. Maybe they need more parks. Anything, any business you have, you find out what your client appreciates and what they like, and do it for them, and they'll appreciate it more so than the branded merchandise that we tend to give out, because that doesn't really mean anything.
Small things that matter.
Right. Branded merchandise just means that I'm gonna want you to walk around with a phone case that says my company name on it. But if you do something that says maybe their name on it or their company name on it, it'll mean a lot more.
100%. Just keep it personal. So when you started out in 2015 or 2014, sorry, I keep messing that up. When you started out in 2014, what did your staff body look like at the time?
You're looking at the staff body. It was just me. I knew very little about aviation, aside from the fact that I had flown for a number of years, but I didn't know anything about charter. So the difference between charter, I'll tell you this, there's something called Part 135. So in order for somebody to charter an aircraft, to be able to charge somebody money for it, you have to have what's called Part 135. It's sort of like you can just pick up your car and start driving people to destinations legally, to an airport or anywhere else, and charging them. You have to have some sort of livery driver. I mean, things changed when it came to Uber. A lot of the dynamics changed, but up until then, first of all, you have to have a taxi license. People get pulled over all the time. Hi, where's your taxi license? And it costs a lot of money. People used to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in New York City to get medallions.
Medallion, yeah.
Right? Those days are over. But in order to charter an aircraft, you have to have Part 135 licensing. If somebody owns an aircraft, they fly under what's called Part 91 rules. So I had to learn all about that stuff. I had to learn about federal excise taxes. I had to learn about segment taxes. And I had to learn about all the little nuances about charter.
Did you have your own flying license?
I don't know. I've never had a dream to be
What about a Part
pilot.
107?
I never had a dream to be a pilot, although I'm probably going to do it one day. I have my books upstairs. I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. That's really all I wanted to be, but it's a little more dangerous, a little more complex, and require a tremendous amount of time to be able to commit to make it happen. Anything you do, you need to be able to commit to.
You got to set the goal.
You have to set the goal.
1 year from today.
Right. But it would mean that I have to put my business aside to be able to do that. Doesn't mean that I won't do that one day, but right now I'm focused on growth of our business,
Urgent flights,
on scaling our business, and that's what we really try to do every single day.
Yeah, and now you have the new baby, Urgent Flights.
UrgentFlights.com.
You got to raise that baby.
Right.
We're really UrgentFlights.com.
That's right.
Does Urgent Flights or Paraflight, do they do anything do you do anything international?
Sure. I'm not going to tell you we're as busy international because international flights just cost that much more money. I'm saying, I'm not talking about Toronto or Montreal, but once you start flying over the Atlantic, you're flying into Europe, you're flying into Israel. We have clients who do it. I'll be honest with you. My account doesn't like when I say that. We discourage. Many people will call us up, and I know it's probably not the motto of many businesses, but the first question I ask them is, why are you flying private? So if somebody wants a regular trip, they want to call in 4 days because they want to fly from New York to Miami, I'd be like, why don't you just fly business, right? Pay $600 for a ticket, take 5 tickets, $3,000, and you're done. Why spend all that money? Now, sometimes people do it because it's one thing that we help them with, is to be able to capital. The one thing that you can get more of is time.
What does it typically cost? Like if I wanted to fly out of Lakewood Airport to Miami?
Well, you can't fly out of Lakewood Airport to Miami. Funny you mentioned Lakewood because it's actually a small airport. But if you wanted to fly out of the closest airport to Lakewood to Miami on a smaller aircraft, you talk about a one-way or round trip, it's going to be probably in the area of $20,000 to $60,000. So that's from the smallest aircraft one way to like a round trip on what's called a heavy aircraft. It also depends on timing too. If you want to do that on Super Bowl weekend, it's probably going to cost you more. New Year's weekend is going to cost you more. Holiday weekends are going to cost you more. And also depends on where the aircraft are. We have to position them from. So the closest airports to Lakewood, one that we use 90% of the time or more, is Belmar Airport, BLM, Monmouth Jet Center, best FBO I think in the country for sure, maybe even the world. Shout out to Monmouth Jet Center. They're great. They're
this
so
is where
accommodating.
I smile and nod, pretending like I know what FBO means.
Yeah. Oh, FBA. I apologize. FBO is the name of a terminal. No, you can always ask. FBO is the name. It's called a fixed base operator. So just when you go into a regular airport, you have terminal A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. Yeah. When you go to airports, some of them are smaller airports that only have one fixed base operator, which is the terminal that you go to. So if you went into Monmouth, you have one. If you went into Miller Air Park, which is in Toms River, New Jersey, there's also one. If you go into Teterboro Airport, they have 7 of them. They have Signature and Meridian and Atlantic and Jet Aviation. Actually, they have 3 signatures out there. Signature South, Signature East, Signature West. And if you go to Newark Airport or JFK, they actually also only have one. So that's your terminals, fixed base operators. And that's where the private jets come into. That's where the private jets fuel up. And that's where all that magic happens.
Nice. So you started out alone in June of 2014. I made up June, right. But so how did you scale from there? How did that work?
So from there, I realized that it was just getting a little too much for me to be able to manage every little step. And there's many factors when it comes to aviation. So you have to deal with the clients of what they need, the routes of what they need, the aircraft. So I started to build up a team, and I had the benefit of having some tremendous great people who work for me who are honest, who are ethical, and they're really great to work with. I actually 3 of our personnel are actually brothers from the same family. 2 of them live locally here, and one of them lives in the West Coast. So at like 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning, he takes over because now it's only 9 o'clock, 8, 9, 10 o'clock out there. So he can go for another couple hours, and then the next ones might take over when it's 3 o'clock in the morning there and it's 6 o'clock in the morning over here. But the most important thing you have to do is develop a solid team, people who trust in you, people who believe in you. And 2 things we always tell anybody who starts to work with us. We have 2 things, no lying and no stealing. It's very important because our clients trust us, and we have to trust our personnel too. That no matter what they're telling, no matter how difficult the challenge may be, you need to tell us the truth so that we can work with you. If somebody's going to lie to you on the little things, they're going to lie to you on the big things. If somebody's going to steal $1 from you, they're going to steal $1 million from you. It makes no difference. So you have to be honest and ethical. That's the first thing we look at before we even look at experience or anything else. Are they honest, straight shooters who are willing to work with us and work under sometimes tremendous amounts of pressure? It's definitely a pressure, this business. I always tell people, if you want to get into aviation, if you're looking for a pressured business, get into aviation. If you want to increase that pressure tenfold, get into organ flights. Just imagine the pressure of that. Just be able to get the aircraft, get everything that you need, and be able to bring back a life-saving organ in the time allocated, in the time allotted. And you can have a mechanical, or things can go wrong, and you have to be able to think on your feet and be able to pivot very, very quickly and look for various different options when the chips are down. Not everything always goes great. I don't think there's any business that goes great. So you have to just be able to manage it. And I micromanage it a bit, maybe sometimes a bit too much. I can tell when I'm on the phone with my guys and they're rolling their eyes, and I say, it's okay for you to roll your eyes, but it's my business and I need to make sure. And sometimes I micromanage those details just to make sure that we're ahead of the game for anything that could potentially go wrong.
And how do you deal with that pressure?
It's just what it is.
Oh, I should ask actually, do you feel that pressure as much now that you have 60 people running the show?
Well, it's not full 60 running the show every day. We have drivers and we have doctors and medics, and we probably have 10 flight coordinators. No, definitely a lot less pressure. For the most part, I keep my phone on 24 hours a day to be able to do it. But there are times that I let them know that I'm on a flight and I just found out there's no Wi-Fi on board. And they're like, don't worry, we got it from here. And as soon as we land, I see everything that went on. But no, it's very important. I have a very, very solid team behind. And thankfully, I put a tremendous amount of trust in them. And they've proved it over and over and over.
Do you feel like if you wanted to take a month and go to a place where there was no Wi-Fi and just do your thing, like what would happen to Paraflight and urgent flights?
It's my dream. I'm not comfortable enough doing that. And it's probably a fault of mine. But it is my dream. I do say that. I tell people I haven't slept since 2014. And I say that half as a joke, but half serious. My phone is by my pillow. And if my phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm the one who picks it up. But I hope one day to be able to go somewhere without Wi-Fi and not have to worry. Not that I can be somewhere. I think my ADD will kick in too quickly if I don't have access to a phone or to be able to communicate. But I think my ultimate goal, and I've been in talks with people who wanted to buy pieces of the business or wanted to invest in our business, and I always tell them my goal is one day to be able to just not have to worry about the business for a few hours or a day or a week, whatever it might be. My phone always stays on because I always try to help people, and I deal with medical transports and medical challenges that people have, so my phone is always on for that. But I do look forward to that day that I'll be able to hand over the reins of the day-to-day operations where I wouldn't have to worry about it. But hopefully.
What was the most impactful hire that you made in the last 10 years?
The most impactful hire was my coordinators. Because each one of them brings another value to there. So most of the people that I hire have to have some sort of experience in either aviation or an organ transplant. So at least they get it and they understand it. It's very hard. I would think that it would take at least 2 years, if not longer, to train somebody in. So train somebody in to understand every aspect of aviation to really get them up to speed. So the 3 brothers that we spoke about, they're the Todd brothers, for those who know them, and they were doing aviation before I started. And not before I started, before we started working together. So they do cargo and they do some luxury flights and other stuff that they do. So they understand, they do, aircraft brokerage. So they understand aviation. So
and why is that so important?
Because it means that you don't have that learning curve that other people have, right? If I had to start explaining this to new hires what an FBO is, right? Or what Part 135 is, or what's involved in charter, or about their duty days, and how do you source new aircraft, right? If you need to get an aircraft right now, if I have to do all that work, I'm not really gaining much by doing that. I'll tell you, I did the same thing when it came to marketing. I would hire marketing companies who knew nothing about aviation, right? And it would take me 4 months or 5 months just to get them up to speed of what I do. And by the time their 6-month engagement was up, all we had was a month to work together. So I started looking for aviation market for companies that specialized in aviation, who understood it, with the risk of understanding that they're probably doing some work for my competitors, and that's okay too. That's perfectly okay for that to happen, but at least they understand that business. And it's just like you wouldn't hire somebody to, if you're in construction, you're not going to hire a plumber who just started this morning. You want somebody who has experience in it so that they can understand that. Or if you were doing a hire for somebody who's going to be a site foreman, right? You have an option. You can pay a premium and get somebody who's been a site farmer for, for the last 5 or 10 years and they have extensive experience. So now they just have to come into your business, or those who will start off at a much lower rate, a much lower pay, and just you're going to train them into the business.
I've seen it called, in the context of hiring, it's batteries included or batteries not included, right? So there's the two approaches. If you get someone batteries not included, then it's a lot cheaper, and you train them in, and you're like their trainer, so that there's the loyalty, they'll stick with you. Whereas if you get one batteries included, so there's less of that learning curve for them, so you have that advantage, but they're going to be more expensive, and they're also going to be, they're more likely to jump ship because they've already come with their own experience.
It's very interesting. I never heard that before, but if it's okay with you, I'm going to use it. I'll try to.
I didn't make it up, so right. Please use it.
That's okay. It's really great. I agree with you on what that means. Although I don't know that I agree 100% that if you train somebody in that they're not going to go elsewhere, or if they came to you, they will go elsewhere.
Well, it's not the only factor that people decide.
Right, but it is a risk that you go into any business that you're going to train somebody and they might become your competitor the next day. It's
Right.
possible. It's possible.
And how do you say one should combat that?
I don't think you can. I think, well, I'll tell you, the way you can combat that is just give them a good work environment, and appreciate them. And the truth is, if at some point they develop their wings and they want to go out and fly, you got to let that happen. It's just what it is, the nature of business. Think about people in the nursing home business. I would tell you that most nursing home owners, if not all of them, all started off as an administrator, and then from there they went on and they found some investors and they bought a home or 2 or 3 or whatever they were able to get a hold of, and they move on and they spread their wings. You can't really hold somebody back from going into a business. If they're loyal to you, we try to be very, very loyal to our staff. And if they're loyal to you, it doesn't mean that they're not going to grow one day. It just means that they outgrow what you can offer them. And then you have some people who are just happy to do that. They don't want to take the risk. They want to know that they have a steady paycheck coming in every single week, and they don't want, being a CEO or being an entrepreneur is not as easy as it looks. Sometimes people look at people when they're successful and they say, wow, that guy's got just, giving out a lot of charity, or they live in a beautiful home, or they drive a nice car, or maybe they even have their own private jet or their helicopter, but they don't know the struggle. The struggle. I can't tell you how many years I struggled where I couldn't pay my bills. I didn't know where I was going to come up with a mortgage payment, how I was going to pay for my children's tuition. And that's part of the value of my business. When I've had people who approach me, I said, you know what it means that I didn't go on vacation for 6 years? You know what it means when I wasn't able to pay my food bills? And I think you can find most entrepreneurs have gone through that, where they put everything they have. I used to have, properties that I sold because I believed in my business, and we would struggle. And my family, everybody gave up of that because it was part of our dream and our mission that I would take every single dollar that I had and I put it into my business to help it grow. When I bought a vehicle for my business before I bought a vehicle for myself, because I needed that vehicle to grow my business. So sometimes people don't always see that journey, but I'm pretty confident that most entrepreneurs, unless they come from a family trust fund or they have a great friend, which I've had some great friends. I'll tell you that when I started my business, I didn't have the ability to book an aircraft, right? Because even if I was going to send them a wire, I needed a credit card to hold it. So I had a friend. I'll tell you, I can say names on here, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I had a friend. His name is Penny Rand. Penny was a close friend of mine for a long time. And I called him up and I said, Penny, I have a flight that I need to book. I just don't have a credit card. And he gave me an American Express Centurion card with no limit on it. And he gave me his card. And he said, grow your business. And I thanked him in public. He was an audience one at a program, and I thanked Penny because he gave that. And I have other friends too who have put up their money to say, hey, I'm going to give you a credit line. I need a credit line for $100,000, for $200,000. Here's a credit line, and utilize it. And then I had another friend who said, hey, I'll put you in touch with a bank who'll be able to factor all your invoices. So that's what we do right now, just a friend who believed in me and wanted me to help that grow. And then I have other friends. I had a friend who hired a business coach for me. That's what he did. He said, hey, I noticed that you're just terrible with time management. Terrible, he said. And I said, so what do you want me to do? He says, well, how do you know when because I missed a meeting with him. I was supposed to come to him for a meeting. It was scheduled for whatever time. Let's call it 3 o'clock. And he calls me at 3:30. It's like, what's up? I said, I totally forgot about the meeting. I forgot. So he says, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to hire a business coach. Her name is Nancy Snell. They call her the calendar queen. And we got on. We had a bunch of Zoom conferences. And she taught me to put everything that I do into my calendar. Everything I do. My kids, if they want me to remember to pick something up somewhere, they put it into my calendar for me. They'll send me an email. It goes right into my calendar. And everything I do is on my calendar. So if I forget something, it just means that I didn't look at my calendar. And that made a huge difference for me. Even our flights. Anytime a flight gets scheduled, as soon as the flight gets booked, our team puts it into my calendar. So they put in the name of the client, the tail number, which is the identifier of the plane, what airport it's at, and what time that departure is, so that I know that we make sure that somebody's there, even though they're making sure. But if I'm the one who's going to go to the airport, I know that it sits in my schedule. So when somebody tries to set something up with me, I'll tell them, hey, I have a window right now between 12 and 4 that's available. I have a window between 12 and 4. And if you can put it in right now, just try to do it shortly before it fills up with something else. But time management is critical. And friends, sometimes you have to get tough love from your friends. You know, sometimes it's not a friend who says, hey, don't worry, everything you're doing is great. Sometimes they'll call me out on something, and if I can change it, then I will, and I appreciate that. But that was the benefit that I have. And getting back to what I was saying, the struggle is very, very real when it comes to entrepreneurs and business owners, because they're passionate about something they have, and they believe in something, but they need to be able to get to the finish line. They'd have to be able to get to the start line. So it usually requires somebody who's going to believe in them, whether they have family members who can provide them with that support and finances, or sometimes just very close friends who can do that as well.
Right. No, I definitely resonate with that, because people don't see that journey, and they see like, okay, I'm working for, let's say, an accountant. I'm working for an accounting firm, and I make whatever I make. I'm not the one who gets to decide, what my salary is going to be. And then they want to break off and start their own thing. But what they don't realize is, for the first like 5 years, they're not making anything, because they're just building.
Right.
They're not necessarily going to make it past those 5 years. Right. And the stress that comes along with it, right, not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring.
Yeah. And I think you have to live with that every day. Not that it's good to have stress in your business, but you need a little bit of stress, because you never want to get into that comfort zone to say, you know what, I got it made, and this is exactly what I'm going to make every year. And because things happen, there are different balances that take place in your business, and different variables that can take place that can hinder your business. And you always have to look at every client, and I'm going to do whatever I can to maintain that client, even the clients who are most loyal to us. And we're extremely loyal to our clients, but we know that we have to always perform. We have to always be on our A game to make sure that our clients are happy.
Right. Never get comfortable.
Never get comfortable.
So let's talk about client success. You mentioned a few things already that you do to ensure client success, right? With writing down their little preferences. What are some other measures you put in place to make sure the clients are really happy?
So I'll call it transparency and loyalty. They want to know that, especially in our business, jets are very expensive. Private charter is very expensive. And they trust us with their money. That when we come to them and we say, this is the price that you have to pay, that it's the best price we were able to get for them. Not that we're taking advantage of them. We charge no more money for an urgent flight as we would charge for a regular corporate flight. It doesn't make a difference. The fact that it's urgent for them doesn't mean that we're going to charge them any more for that. So whatever the prices and whatever our markup is going to be, it's going to be the same amount if they booked it 3 weeks in advance or if they booked it 3 hours in advance. It doesn't make a difference. We really try to, as I said, loyalty is tremendous. Transparency is tremendous. And just being good to them, appreciating them. We thank every client that gets an invoice after a trip, gets a thank you. We appreciate it because we know they can use other people. And we appreciate the fact that they use us. We thank our vendors too. Our vendors who make a lot of money off of us. And we thank them too. We appreciate the service that they did for us.
So how do you market? How do you market this from the beginning? And what are you doing now to get this thing out there?
So in the beginning, I had no money for marketing. I didn't do anything. It was just I would pick up my phone. I would call people. I would call friends.
Cold calls?
Not cold calls to...
Warm calls.
Yeah, warm calls. People who knew me. And really what I would tell my clients is, I need your help. So one thing that we don't do is we never disclose who our clients are and when they're flying. So we tell them if anybody finds out that you flew today, it's because you told them. So our families have no idea, even in our office, only the people who need to know. So the coordinators will know who's flying, but nothing else. I will tell you that there was a client who lived in a neighborhood of one of our coordinators for years, and they never knew. Our coordinator knew who the client was, but the client never knew who the coordinator was because they had never met. And they would never go over to them and say, hey, by the way, I know who you are. We never discussed that. So client confidentiality is really, really important. And we're really a stickler for that. So nobody knows who we fly. So it becomes challenging, right? Because some people put on their website their whole list, their whole book of clients of who they fly. We don't do that. So people only find out who we fly when our clients tell them, and we do that. We actually hand a pile of business cards sometimes to our clients. Say, listen, if you know anybody who could benefit from our concierge service, kindly send them our way. And then we started marketing. We hired a couple marketing companies. We got some news articles out. We got some, got podcasts such as yours who reach out to us, and we've been on some TV shows and sometimes some stories for the charity work that we've done get out there in newspapers and articles and things like that, and just word of mouth over the years. And then of course we do some branding. We go into many magazines, both Jet magazines and some other magazines that we go into, and we don't do it all the time because it's very, very expensive. And we try to really capitalize and maximize on our marketing, because once that goes out, it's gone. We started doing a lot of social media marketing now because it gets out much quicker, and it's generally cheaper to be able to get out those hits to people. And you have to find your target market, because you could spend a lot of money and it goes nowhere. So if you start putting out Facebook ads that people who don't need private jets are looking at, you just throw all your money into the garbage. So we try to do that focus to people in our industries who can benefit from that, and we hope to get a decent return on that.
And which avenues did you find was most effective over the years?
I believe social media and maybe some radio spots, TV spots, some of the shows that we've been on where people get to communicate and they really understand what we bring to the table. You're limited to what you can put into a one-page ad of what you do. It's hard to explain what your service is, but when people get to see you over social media marketing, it could make a big difference.
Right. So what kind of social media marketing do you do? You put out educational content, or is it just paid ads?
No, it's not. We actually don't do any paid ads. I mean, we put stuff out on our Instagram, some on our Facebook. We do a lot of interactions on LinkedIn. So we post articles, we write articles, things like that, and we've become somewhat of an expert in our field, which is what you have to do in everything. You have to really understand every aspect of your business in any business that you do. So if you're a caterer, you better know how to cook, and you better know how to drive a truck. You better know anything that you need to do so that you can service your client. There's nothing that's below anybody in our business that we wouldn't do. So I have no problem picking up food and bringing it to an airport. I have no problem driving a car, driving a client. Anything that we need to do, we're willing to do for our clients. And you need to do that in any business that you have. You have to understand every aspect of it, so that if somebody leaves one day, you're not left holding the bag because you don't know what to do. You have to understand everything. So I know how our computer systems work, how our technology works, how our app works, how our phone systems work, everything, so that if I have to step in and do it, I can do that. We have, bookkeepers who take care of our finances, but if they are not here for the next 2 days, we have to know if they book, pun intended, then we know how to send out wires, and we know how to process credit card payments and things like that. We have to know how to do that.
It's really important, because you could have like an IT guy who sets up your whole storage system, and if one day he decides he's too busy, or you decide he's too busy because it takes him a week to come,
right?
And then you're up a creek without a paddle,
right? Absolutely.
Because you don't know anything about how your system's running.
Right. It's very important. I think people understand that when you become an expert in your field, because you know everything about the business. I know guys in the nursing home business. We somewhat share like an office suite with them, and you see how not only do they know everything about their business, but they're happy to teach others about the business. They want other people to succeed as well, and that's what we try to do. We try to help our clients succeed on whatever they're going to do. We say it's cliche, you focus on your business and we'll focus on your flights, but we really try to have them do that, so that when they have to go somewhere, they shouldn't have to worry about their flights, because whatever we are as a vendor taking care of for them, we're going to do that. And it's like that with everything that you do. If you're a real estate management company and you're doing management for a real estate owner, you want to know that you take care of everything for them, that they can focus on doing what they do and you focus on what you do. But just make sure that you really understand every nuance and every part and parcel of your business.
And why is it so important for the consumer to be able to close their eyes and know that everything is being taken care of for them?
Because that's what they're paying for. They're paying a premium so that's taken care of for them. They have other things they have to focus on. So if somebody's in the real estate business and they're going to a closing, right? And they have to go, or they're going with their banker to go look at 6 properties so they can figure out that they can close on time. You think they want to worry about if the jet is going to be there on time, if there's going to be ground transport waiting for them, if there's going to be food for them? They don't want to worry about that. They have business that they have to take care of. So that's the value that we create to say, hey, You take care of what you do best. We'll do what we do best. You stay in your lane and we'll stay in ours. We don't get involved in their real estate deal. We don't get involved in their nursing home deal. We don't get involved in their mortgages. We don't get involved in anything like that, but we get involved in their air transport.
Yeah, no, it's definitely really important that when you're providing a service, especially if it's like a white glove VIP service,
Right.
to take care of everything.
Right.
Literally, like they don't have to think of anything.
Correct.
There's a car waiting for them to
Right.
take them to the plane.
Absolutely.
A meal on the plane. I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it. So have you had any partner? Did you start this on your own, or you've had partnerships?
So I somewhat started on my own. I did have a partner for a little bit, and it really didn't work out. But I will tell you that it's really important. And some partnerships work and some don't. It's really important that if you pick a partner, you understand that you can trust them with everything that you do, and it has to really make sense. Okay, so let's call each person one. Okay, so 1 and 1 equal 2. In a partnership, it has to be much more than that, because if you're just taking a partner and instead of doing, let's call it $1 million a year, now you have to do $2 million a year, but you didn't really change much of your dynamic. So everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. Don't find a partner who's exactly like you. Find a partner who you enjoy spending time with, somebody you're comfortable with, and somebody that you trust. But 1 and 1 have to equal at least 5. It has to just make sense. So my weaknesses will play off their strengths, and my strength will play off their weaknesses. So this way, everybody has their job that they know what to do. So if my job would be to make sure to retain, to work on retaining clients, and maybe my partners would take care of operations. But I had just felt after I got burnt in a partnership that I would be best off just really doing this by myself. There's been tremendous opportunities over the years for people to come in and just put money into the business. And I said, it only makes sense if 1 and 1 is going to equal 5. You have to bring more to the table than just money. That's what I believe. That you have to really understand, and it makes sense. Listen, there are partnerships that have 7 partners. Right? You've seen that. People come in and they have a bunch of different partners come in, and sometimes they work. I would say most of the time at some point there's going to be some sort of falling out, because it's hard to get, 2 people to agree, let alone 5, 6, or 7 of people to agree to something. But for some people it works, and sometimes people will take a partner for maybe just certain investments or certain deals. But to have partnerships, and I envy those who have great partners. Sometimes you see people, and I have friends who have their partnership of 3 people and they just work great together, and
you never know what's
they're
going
a great
on behind
dynamic.
the curtain.
Well, it's true, but some of them that I do know, because some of them are our clients and I do know what goes behind, and they're great. It just works. And I always tell them how lucky they are that they found such good partners to be able to work, because they can really grow. That's really a force. I mean, if I had a partnership with people who are like, and I had 2 or 3 partners and they were great, and we'd grow so big. It just has to really work. And not everybody's cut out for that.
What would you say to someone who's starting out their business, whatever the business is, and he doesn't want to take a loan, but someone offers to partner with him and he would be the money side of the partnership? What would you say?
So those are very, very challenging, and I had that in the beginning for sure. And after I decided to go on my own, I was very, very hesitant. So I would say you'd be much better off giving somebody some small return on their money, or have an exit that that you can get to. Don't start with taking cash advances, which people do, and they get themselves just so mired in debt and they don't even know how to climb out of it. Understand and grow slow. Grow organically. You don't have to have the largest business day one. If you want to grow and you have a vision, just sit down, try to get yourself a mentor, try to get yourself a business coach who really understands it, who has no skin in the game, and you're probably going to have to pay them a little bit of money to help you. But know what your vision is. Say, this is where I want to be in 6 months, and this is where I want to be in a year, and be conservative about it. Don't be aggressive. Start off slowly, because you make mistakes, and mistakes can cost you a lot of money. And in the beginning, a lot of money can really bankrupt your entire business. So it's important to do that. I would say be very hesitant about taking a partner, because if you could do it on your own, and you can make all those decisions. I've had people who wanted to become partners, and they wanted 70% of the business, and it meant that I had no say in the business or anything else like that. And I say, it doesn't work for me. I want to really be able to grow my business. And I'm not saying I won't take a partner one day, or won't take investors one day, or it won't be bought out one day. Whatever it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But I tell people, just really make sure before you take a partner, know that you have no problem spending, 20 hours a day with them, because chances are that's what you're going to do. More time than you're going to spend with your family or any of your friends, you're going to spend with your partners. And most things that's most important is you need to be able to trust them with uncounted money. Meaning that if you walked into a room and there was a pile of cash on the table, you have to trust your partner, because in a sense, that's what you're doing in a business. You're trusting them with uncounted money, and they're
100%.
trusting you with uncounted money. So you need to have loyalty, transparency, honesty. But as I said, I'd be very hesitant unless you saw a good reason, or unless two people just came up with a great idea together and they've been friends for years and they know they can do it. But understand that a bad partnership can break up your friendship too. So that's something you have to really understand, and just know that, maybe it's something you have to understand, that if your partner ever was in a partnership before, and if that's something that they can do or something that they can't do. Not everyone's cut out for partnerships.
What's your opinion on taking loans for business? I mean, you kind of touched on it, but I'm asking now more directly.
So be careful. You really have to know that you can pay your loans back, right? So if somebody needs to grow their business and they take $100,000 loan. The chance of you with a new business getting a decent rate from a bank is slim to none, because unless you have an asset that you can put it against, you're not getting a loan of 5%, right? So that will cost you, it's $100,000, 5% will cost you $400 a month, $420 a month. Plus you want to pay down a little bit, it's going to cost you, a little more. But now some people are desperate, right? Because they don't have a bank who's going to finance them, and now they need $100,000, and now they can get charged 12, 16%. It's a lot of money. I would think if you have family or friends who believe in your vision, maybe even give them a small piece. Say, listen, one day I'll give you 1% of my company, 2% of my company. And they might do, but maybe have an exit strategy that one day you can just pay them off and be done with it. That's an option too. But I think a lot of people go to family if they have that ability. I didn't have that ability, but some people do.
I like that idea where you go to a family member, essentially asking them for a favor, but you're not really asking for a favor because you're giving them something in return.
Right. And make sure you believe in it, and don't just walk in and say, hey, can you lend me 100,000 or 200,000 or $1 million, whatever that money may be. Have it written down, put together a business plan, let them know that you value their money and you're going to protect their money just like you would protect your own money, and sign a personal guarantee. They shouldn't think that if your business fails, you're done. I've had failures over the years where I made, I took money from people and mistakes and it didn't work and business didn't happen, and I paid them back. Maybe it took, a couple of years to do it, but it's very important for them to understand that their loan is not dependent on your business success. You're going to make sure that they're made whole on the money that they gave you.
What are some challenges that you've seen over the years of building this in the last 10 years?
Well, first one is I started very, very lean. Right? We still run a lean operation where I didn't have the resources to be able to, and I would always say, I wish I had somebody who can take this over for me. And I think if I would backtrack a couple of years, I'd probably put together the money to have, a personal assistant or somebody who can take that load off of me, sooner rather than later. In the beginning, I was doing my own accounting, and it took a tremendous amount of time, and I'm not an accountant. So it probably took me 2 years until I decided to hire a bookkeeping firm that does it offsite. They do it. They're absolutely great. It cost me about $4,000 a month, but they watch everything. I would have lost that money in no time. I mean, they've made that money back for me just simply misplacing an invoice or forgetting to go after a client for a payment that we're owed, or maybe accidentally sending an extra payment somewhere, or watching every dollar that comes in and out of that business is so important. So I think it's very important that one of the first things that you should do is make sure you have your books in order. I can tell you that if somebody needed to look at our books, I don't have to tell them to come back in an hour, in a day, in a week. We can literally, our bookkeeper can print it out. Every sort of spreadsheet on every aspect of our business could be done. And we have that literally from day one.
Wow. So get a bookkeeper.
Get a bookkeeper, yeah.
100%. 100%. But what if someone can't afford a bookkeeper? How would they?
Get QuickBooks, do something. Don't keep things on paper, and don't count on saving a note on your phone, because things can happen and you could be out a lot of money. Just think about it. It's like, it's your money. Even if it's an investor's money, it's your money that you're responsible for. And if you want to grow your business, again, you can hire bookkeepers who start off at probably a few $100s a month if you're a small business growing. It's an important, just like paying rent is important, and paying insurance. I mean, it's also important. You have to have insurance, Arizona emissions insurance, and liability for whatever your thing is. These are the things that protect you. And you're right, it costs money, but don't cut corners. We spend a tremendous amount of money on our auto insurance simply because our vehicles are emergency vehicles with lights and sirens. sirens, and I said I'd want to be honest with them, because if God forbid there's ever an accident, I want to make sure that we are covered on everything. I don't want to have to make a phone call to say, you think we're covered for this? We pay premiums on our insurance. And I said, insurance and bookkeeping, just make sure everything is in order, because when everything gets, thrown around and you become flustered, you can't run a business that way.
So back to the marketing. Do you ever use video for your marketing? I have to ask this question. I'm a video guy.
Yeah. So we've done it sometimes. So when we go to trade shows, we'll usually have, 10 or 15 minute video in the background. So we do a tremendous amount. We sit at an airport and the planes are landing and taking off. We take tremendous amounts of video that we utilize. So it's our video that we utilize in our promotions. But videos absolutely go a long way. And I've been hesitant because doing video productions are expensive.
Absolutely.
And they're worth it. They're absolutely worth it. Because the way to really get your message out, as opposed to just doing it on a printout, is for somebody to get an engaging video. The trick, though, is to be able to do that engaging video in very short form. Nobody's watching a 5-minute video. They're watching, people have, whether you call it ADD or ADHD, or people just don't have the patience.
That's why our videos are 59 seconds.
Yeah, I would say that's about it. That's about it. You don't want to go much longer. I mean, if you want to figure out how much time people have, it's to focus on something, it's very little. Have you ever heard of TED Talks?
Yeah.
Okay, so
you just did one.
Right,
yeah.
I just did one. So their limit on a TED Talk is 18 minutes. That's it. That's their limit, 18 minutes, because they felt that even if you came in and you sat in an audience and you focused on something, you cannot focus on longer than 18 minutes. So I think I agree with you. I would say somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds is the absolute lifespan that you can do for a promotional video. I can tell you, I wouldn't go longer than a minute. I'll tell you, even on voice notes, people send me WhatsApp notes. I say if it's longer than 30 seconds, I can't listen to it. I just don't have the patience.
That's really 15 seconds if you're playing double speed.
I don't do double speed.
Whoa.
Yeah,
let's talk about that.
I don't do double speed. I do regular speed. I want to listen to the message, but usually 30 seconds. I tell them, I said, even if you have to send me 5 messages, but leave them at 30-second clips. And when I send out a voice note, I watch that clock, 29 seconds, and I end it.
That's great. Mid-sentence.
Yeah.
Amazing. Anyway, thank you very much for taking the time out for this.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time out.
And so if someone wanted to get in touch with Paraflight or Urgent Flights, let's say they wanted a flight, because we have billionaires that watch this. So how would they get involved?
We kept it very simple. They can go to paraflight.aero. That's paraflight.aero. They can go to urgentflights.com. That's pretty simple. They can go to organflights.com, which is also pretty simple. Or they can call us. We have a toll-free number, 844-538-1911, 844-538-1911. They can find us on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram,
like
Facebook,
it ends in
Twitter.
911.
Exactly.
Amazing. All right.
All right.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.